2012. This is a regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We're about to begin with a very important proclamation. We just had a spotlight, an employee spotlight awards for all of our employees, and we're following up on that by putting one employee in the spotlight twice, and she deserves it. So I'm going to read this proclamation. Would the commissioners please stand? And Charlotte, would you please come forward?
Face the camera.
This is difficult for Charlotte because she's a very modest, humble person, and I know she finds this difficult to be out in front of everyone and getting this kind of recognition, but it's well deserved. So this proclamation is of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, honoring Charlotte Anderson with the 2012 Pickens County Employee Spotlight of the Year Award. Whereas Charlotte Anderson is the gold standard of the most frontline employees in all of Pickens County government, and whereas Charlotte Anderson handles external and internal issues with professionalism, patience, and grace, her ability to troubleshoot all of the questions and problems that come her way really makes the difference between a customer feeling heard and served by government instead of feeling trapped in a bureaucracy. And whereas Charlotte Anderson has voluntarily served on many internal committees, including the Safety Committee, the Web Committee, the Insurance Broker RFP Committee, and the Employee Holiday Bazaar Committee, there are most likely more that we haven't listed here. And whereas while she may not be the most high-profile employee, what makes Charlotte Anderson stand out, or shall we say outstanding, is that she is so helpful, dependable, graceful, and proactive that she's that constant that we all appreciate so much in our busy jobs. And whereas everyone that Charlotte Anderson has touched in some way tells us what a stellar employee and person she is, we are so used to her being a superstar that we often forget to thank her enough for all that she does. And whereas we can't think of a more deserving person for the Employee Spotlight of the Year Award than Charlotte Anderson, she's the best example of the kind of county employee we should all strive to be. Thank you, Charlotte.
I just want to thank everyone in the county that I work with, and it's a joy to work with everyone. And you guys are all great, and I really enjoyed working with John since he's been here over the last year. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Before we go into the rest of the agenda, can I say something really briefly?
Sure.
I would just like to apologize to all the employees for not having made the employee appreciation hour beforehand. I've had some thermostat and heating problems at my home, and I had to wait till the maintenance people at Hunter Creek were able to finish that up before I could leave this morning. So my apologies, but I greatly appreciate everyone's service. Thank you.
John, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, there's not additions or deletions to the agenda, but I would note that in front of you is a resolution that, because we're making some changes we did not have in your packet, It is the resolution adopting the IGA on the access control plan, and so the substantive part for the resolution, which is the IGA, was in your packet. We apologize for the oversight. This is just the resolution authorizing approving the IGA and authorizing the chair to sign.
Well, thank you, John. Yes, Jack?
I'd like to clarify, we have an ordinance before us as noted on the agenda and a resolution, so will we be asked to approve both?
And Jack, that was the error. I apologize. It's not an ordinance, it's a resolution to adopt the IGA. And that was the change that was being made.
Specific, okay, thank you.
At this point, we'll have public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment at this time? Yes, sir?
Thank you kindly. I'll state my name.
Yes, great.
Nomenclature MZVZ III. Happy New Year, folks. That includes people in TV land. First thing, well, you know, I'm glad that eventually staff was able to impress upon you last year the importance of what? Road maintenance. It should always be a priority beside what? Fire and law enforcement. Hopefully you keep it up from now on. It's extremely important. Now the second thing is, yeah, I was here and I was sleeping, but I could still hear the guy talk about airports, and I've been at airport meetings before. You know, not just in this area, but California, whatever. There's one thing, is that one of the hubs that's Aspen Airport, or whatever you want to call it, Pitkin County or whatever, is called the Burbank Airport, but now it's called the Bob Hope Airport. You know, what happens, traffic there has gone down, passenger traffic has gone down for quite a long time now. Some other airports that has happened too. You know, as you're dealing with the airport plan, you're going to have to take in consideration what is happening at the hubs that that one deals with, all right, for this area. Also, beside what they're dealing with, what is the overall trend? Now, as I've said before, and the FAA backs me up, Aspen has a very dangerous airport, topography, everything else. Now, Garfield, the airport in Garfield, the reason why they get a lot of planes there, and people are willing to take the longer time to drive up here, is that their planes can be better taken care of. Now, they're not looking for passenger traffic. Garfield has always been geared for what? Cargo. Now, if you're dealing with your airport economics, one of the things that you might want to deal with people that, you know, have the planes or are renting them or whatever you want to say, is to try to provide them some more services and better service. That means that you're going to have to deal with the infrastructure. That means that you're going to have, I'll just use the expression, housing or hangars for their planes, unless you get Jay Leno to rent out a hangar. He does that at the Bob Hope Airport for his cars. You see him driving up and down, say up and down the road and all that. But you're going to have to give them, you know, something that they can really work with. Now remember, Garfield has that kind of stuff. All right, also you have Eagle. Now, the thing too is that you're going to have to decide or see what the FAA is recommending for this geographical areas like this in terms of planes. And then I would just recommend that you would negotiate with the various airlines what can be done. Now remember, Frontier bounced out, I think it was like maybe 1,300 people last year. Yeah, even though they're coming back, whatever they're doing. The only other thing that could be done, maybe with someone, and then I'll finish, in the county, is that they could go more into the corporate records of the airlines that, you know, that one is dealing with. And I would suggest at times, if they could, to also send that person or persons directly to the corporate headquarters so they can talk with much higher decision makers to see what really is going on. Even if you feel that your position is inferior to theirs, I would suggest that. I thank you very much for listening to me, Commissioners. And TV Land, I thank you very much for listening to me also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Michael?
Yes.
MC, I appreciate your comments, and I don't want to get into a protracted debate. I think in some ways you make some interesting points, but I can't let stand the comment that we have a very dangerous airport. We have a different airport than others at the high altitude, but our carrier commercial services, the thousands of flights throughout a year, as well as the private flights, are FAA-approved routes, reviewed routes, and have an excellent safety record.
I just read the FAA records like I did. They send this stuff to me.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period, and we'll move on to commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments at this time? George?
I'll start. Two things. About a week ago, last Sunday, I think, there was a great program on NOVA PBS, and it highlighted the snowmass ice age discovery. And it was a fascinating program, and they talked about, it was Kirk Johnson, who was the chief curator at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, was sort of the MC of it. And they talked about different theories, which I thought was pretty fascinating in terms of why these animals, these mammoths and mastodons and giant bisons, all not only ended up at the Ziegler Reservoir site, but over many, many years, why so many died there. And one of the theories they talked about was a series of earthquakes that happened over hundreds of years. And it was pretty fascinating how they looked at scenarios, how that might have occurred. And they also looked at the possibility of that there was actually human life back in this area 30,000 years ago based on some markings that they noted on some of the bones that it looked like meat had been cut away. So it's a fascinating program, and I think if anyone who missed it would like to see it, I think you can go online to NOVA PBS and go into the Ice Age Discovery and be able to see it. But I thought it was a great program. The other thing that's coming up is this weekend is the Owl Creek Chase. This is one of the premier Nordic races in the country. It's been going on since 1985. And each year it generates more and more elite racers from around the country to participate, as well as citizen racers. It will start at the Snowmass Golf Course Sunday at 11 a.m. and it will end up at the Aspen Valley Ski and Snowboard office over by the middle school in Aspen. So it's a 21K course. There will not be any parking available at the start, so you either need to take RAPTA and work your way up to Snowmass, or you can park at the Aspen Middle School, and there will be shuttles running every 15 minutes, starting at about 8:45 or 8:15, I think. If you need more information, you can go online to Aspen. The website is owlcreekchase.com. So it's a great event, and I think you'll see a lot of great athletes in the community this weekend participating.
Thank you, George. Any other commissioner? Jack?
Yeah, a lot of thanks are due all around for the X Games that came to our community. In particular, of course, Aspen Skiing Company, ESPN, very important, and everyone who made it happen, including our staff at Pickens County. And in particular, I noticed the sheriff had a good presence, and the people that worked to make it happen. It's really a fantastic event. We really hit the mark years ago when we chose to prohibit alcohol on the site. It's made it a family affair, and incidents happen, and kids are kids. But overall, it was I went a very small piece of Thursday, but 3 days. It was a very successful event. I just didn't see any problems at all. Just thanks to everyone who worked to make that a success, and of course, good luck to John Rigney and the ski company in their negotiations for bringing it back for years to come.
Thank you, Jack. Any other commissioner comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent actions. We have minutes of the work sessions on 6/21/2011, 7/12/2011, 7/19/2011, 1/10/2012, 1/17/2012, and a special meeting on 7/19/2011, and regular meetings on 1/11/2012 and 1/25/2012. And a resolution appointing members of the Agricultural Committee. So is there a motion to approve this consent item?
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. I did want to make a correction on my January 25th minutes on page 5. I mistakenly showed the passenger facility charge application that's being heard today. I had shown the second reading as February 22nd. I have since corrected that in the signature packet, but if they could amend the motion that this has been corrected.
Okay. So noted. Thank you, Lindy. Yes, John?
And Mike, I just note that the resolution appointing board members does include one appointee for the Conflict of Interest Committee, as well as the for Agricultural Committee.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm just going to abstain on this vote to keep it simple, because there was a couple of these meetings throughout the year when I was not in attendance.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
We're moving on to consent actions. First reading set for public hearing on February 22nd. That's actually a resolution adopting the State Highway 82 Access Control Plan, and ordinance amending Title 11 Building and Construction of the Pickens County Code by adopting the International Fire Code 2009 version as amended and adding a new section 11.44 titled International Fire Code. Brian Paul is here if there are any questions.
So I'd like to essentially what amounts to pull both of them and have a discussion on both items.
Okay. So do you want to have GR come forward?
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
Okay. GR, could you just outline what this is?
Sure. I'm GR Fielding. I'm the Pickens County engineer. I'm joined now by Brian Pettit, the Pickens County Public Works Director. Thank you for a couple of those points of clarification over this being a resolution on ordinance. What the access control plan is a plan for where and what types of accesses are on a stretch of State Highway 82 between Smith Hill Way and the Maroon Creek Bridge. What this does is it puts the needs of the transportation corridor on the same plane as the development pressures that may occur throughout that corridor. What you have is a document that contains a table and a map that correspond to each other, and a resolution to approve an intergovernmental agreement. The reason that we have the IGA is State Highway 82 is owned and managed by the state of Colorado and CDOT, and we are entering into this agreement so that we actually have a say on how we can manage that and manage where these accesses are. The city of Aspen is also in this IGA because some of these accesses are actually within the city limits.
Right, and the process started about 7 years ago when the county recognized that there were development pressures happening between Smithway and the Maroon Creek Bridge. And we started the process, and everything was going fine, but what happened was we really wanted to focus more on a sub-area plan right around the Airport Business Center to the BMC intersection, because that's where we really saw a lot of changes coming up in the future, both with the airport side and the terminal, as well as the runway, and on the ABC side with changes in commercial use and development at BMC site. So that's what really spurred the county to take on the Access Control Plan project, and it's been going strong ever since 2005. So that brings us to today.
One big thing to note, too, is that just because we're going to move forward with a plan doesn't mean that we have plans to go out and build new intersections or to go out and start construction. What this is doing is it's a planning document to allow us to identify, at this point, what the best options are. If need be, this can be amended, but it puts the onus on the developer to tell us how they're going to access the highway with the least amount of impact in the future. As you'll see in the plan, there's a number of accesses to be closed. A lot of these are field accesses that have alternative accesses. Some of them that are to remain open that are just field accesses are things like fishing easements and things like that, too.
Any other questions? Yes, Jack?
Yeah, multiple clarifications here. According to what you presented, GR, we have 25 different accesses that are going to either be expanded, controlled, in some way, form or another, or shut down. On item 6, let me go back. You alluded to development, but it's not development by the private sector or the public sector necessarily. I mean, like you did say, there are closures, etc. And I'm assuming the purpose of this is for safety in someone's determination?
Yes, the major criteria is for safety. Every access onto and off of a highway is what we call a conflict point, and that adds to safety concerns on a highway.
Okay, so when I go to number 6, that's Brush Creek in 82, of course, and it says in your explanation, as part of a development project. Would the development project in this case be simply development of an additional lane?
Yes, and it's the development of the upgrading of the Brush Creek stop from a normal bus stop to the upcoming BRT stop.
Yeah, because I didn't know of any other development there but roadways, so it's good. On item number 11, it's a residential driveway, and that's the Sardi driveway. Mm-hmm. And according to your map and a little calculation of math, it's about a half a mile long new frontage road is going to be put in?
Well, that's an alternative, and for that to come to fruition, we'd need to see some sort of redevelopment at that spot. As of right now, it's not necessarily we're telling them that they're going to have to close their driveway and build a road, but if we're to see any new development in that area, that's the alternative that would give them the safest access onto and off of, say, Highway 82.
Okay, so essentially there's no pressure to do that for the existing home, the small Sardi home now, but in the future, I'm sure that would require certainly working with ComDev, Public Works, and CDOT. Now, I have really strong reservations about creating a half a mile long frontage road in that environment, which is part of, I think what we consider open space, etc. And so time will tell on that one. Now I have on items 12, 13, really 14, 15, 16, these all deal with the existing Baltic Road, Service Center Road for RAFTA and the county, and the future proposed at least as I understand it, affordable housing by AABC. We've had long discussions on this, and a lot of public feedback and work interaction, etc. And so I'm not going to have any request, any discussion now, etc. I'm going to simply state, because of this main element here, I'm going to vote against this. I believe actually our decision is kind of short and midterm, but not long-term. I truly believe that we need an exit to Aspen signalized and an exit at Service Center Road going for Down Valley, Snowmass, etc. And I have not seen any facts or heard any feedback that has changed my mind on that. So we had a process, it was fair, the board decided, we're moving forward, but I'm not going to be able to support this. On item number 18 and 19, it talks about realigning Harmony Place and Owl Creek Road. Would you give us a little feedback what that means or what it requires? Because it's kind of an insane operation to try to align those roads.
Well, and that's exactly why the language is written the way that it is here. There was an effort many years ago to make sure that these were aligned. That did not happen. We now see it every morning and every afternoon during traffic that it wasn't the best decision for traffic operations, and this is just acknowledging that fact and says if the slate were to be wiped clean in that area, we should probably do something.
Okay, the slate wiped clean, that, I just simply don't know how this could ever happen. I guess this is called the ultimate in planning. When the shape of the earth changes, we'll do something.
Yeah.
Good, okay. Minor humor there, but anyway. Thank you for answering my questions on those couple items.
Rob?
A couple of questions. The first one's kind of a background on this, because we've seen this over the last year a couple of times, mainly regarding the Aspen Airport business plan, and that's where my questions are going to be focused on. It seems to me like the last couple of times we've had these meetings, we've left some openings to different options. You've got some full movement traffic signals in various places where we talked about potential for partial movement traffic signals, where we talked about various things. So give me a little, with that kind of thought process in mind, give me a little background as to how this plan developed into this, and how set in stone is this moving forward? Because I don't think we answered a lot of those questions as we, talked about this in over the last year. And if this is something that, the state is putting together as a set in stone, this is the only changes we can make, and generally they don't do those sorts of things, then I'm somewhat in the same position as Jack. Like, why are we moving forward on something so firm? Does that make sense, what I'm looking for here?
Absolutely. At the last work session, we did receive direction from the board to move forward with what we'd been discussing throughout the AABC area. That included things called full movement intersections, and what a full movement intersection just means is you can go up to an intersection and you can either make a right or a left out of it from all four different legs. And then sometimes we talk about a controlled intersection, and that just means that has some sort of control, whether it be stop or a stoplight or a roundabout. What we're not doing with this plan is saying that we're going to have a roundabout here and a stoplight here and that sort of thing. What we're saying is we can have either a stoplight or a roundabout or a stop-controlled full movement intersection. And that's what we're talking about at all of these things. Now, there is an amendment process that's included as Exhibit B in your packet. And if it were to come to light that things were to change and we're to say, you know what, we made a mistake here. There is an amendment process that's similar to what we're going through now. But what it does do is it requires a certain level of analysis, engineering analysis, for each of those changes. And so it puts that burden to change onto that future circumstance.
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question, Rob?
answers my question. That this is the plan as of today.
Yes.
The airport master plan changes things. We go through an amendment process, and the burden of change is on us to make our arguments for why that change needs to happen.
Yeah, and the master planning process was taken into consideration with this plan.
Yeah.
So the airport was an integral player with making this plan that you see in front of you today.
George?
Yeah, as has been stated, we've had numerous conversations, discussions, and presentations on this access plan, and there was not total agreement on that, but there was enough of a majority to move this forward. And there was certainly enough, plenty of input and participation by the businesses at the Airport Business Center, the residents at North 40, RAPTA, CMC as well. And by adopting this, it also gives us the opportunity to continue to stay in line for funding from CDOT and federal funds to hopefully start to look at the ability to improve some of these key intersections. And certainly the intersection at the AABC Baltic Avenue is on the list on CDOT. We've got that on the list, although it has not been funded, but in terms of a long-range project, it's there. And I think that's critical if we want to have any ability to be able to actually address some of these traffic issues. So we have to have a plan in place, we have to have it approved, and then we have the ability to lobby dollars from CDOT to actually go ahead and do these projects.
Any further questions for Giara or Brian?
Michael, I would have a comment for them after the vote, if that's, just so you know we don't move along too quickly.
Do we want to approve this ordinance, adopting or have a motion on this?
I'll make a motion. Motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, with the City of Aspen and the State of Colorado Department of Transportation, adopting the State Highway 82 Access Control Plan.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Respectfully opposed.
Thank you.
Okay. What I'd like to mention, I forwarded an email this morning to you, Brian, and just for the board's information, I guess this proposal from the Denver Regional Council of Governments that I talked about at our retreat to start including road repairs in the metropolitan area as well as finishing the light rail faster project with a regional sales tax is now moving to the idea that also West Slope regions should be passing sales taxes to improve their roads. And they want to take the top 5 projects out of each given TPR to do so. Don Hunt, the director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, will be at that Club 20 meeting. I'm sure there's other opportunities, but that is just one that's coming up. That is tomorrow. The great concern I have is we're moving away from gasoline tax as a funding source for statewide and state roads and moving towards sales tax. And sales tax has long been the only funding source for municipal improvements as well as county improvements, or one of the prime sources, let's put it that way. And, you know, once you stack up your sales tax too much, you cannot proceed with local improvements that are often needed, local funding needs, whether it's the lodging bed tax for the Chamber of Commerce or the Healthy Rivers and Stream Fund. And I just want to make sure that we are really staying on top of this. I mean, there's other ideas being floated around now that we should have sales tax start to pay for our school deficits. And, you know, everything is coming back to sales tax because people don't want to touch property tax issues and because the state hasn't solved those funding problems. But I just want to make sure everyone's aware. It seems really backwards to me to move away from gasoline tax and onto general municipal sales tax and cutting into our ability to fund our local needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jack.
This is, Rachel, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention, though personally I have a little drift to this, but this is going to be a big issue because essentially what this means is the state is saying, guess what?
You're on
We're
your
going
own.
to shift local responsibility for a statewide road system and local roads totally to local government and local citizens. And you got to question what's going on here, and where the leadership really is about transportation in this state. I think Governor Ritter took the challenge, did a great job with FASTER, and there's been some amendments and adjustments in that, and that's all good. But this really shows that the state legislature is unable to meet their responsibilities about funding our roads. And I really do expect a strong movement about schools too. And we've been rather generous as a community in a valley accepting that challenge, but when does the bubble burst on that and these other
It is still evolving. This just could be a trial balloon that won't go anywhere, but again, I wanted to let people know about it. Thank you.
So the next item is item number 4. It's an ordinance amending Title 11, Buildings and Construction of the Picken County Code by adopting the International Fire Code 2009 version as amended and adding a new section 1144 titled International Fire Code. And we have, I believe, our Chief Building Inspector. Is that correct?
Yes, Chief Building Official Brian Paul.
Congratulations, Brian. We haven't seen you since your promotion.
That's true, it is my first
Yeah.
official visit.
Jack, you had some questions on this?
Yeah, well, why don't we do the usual introductions and of the item as well as the individuals, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question.
Okay. Brian, do you want to make a short presentation on this?
I can go ahead with that. I can go ahead and just kind of address where we came from and how we got to where we are.
Okay.
Sure. First of all, I'm Brian Paul. I am the new Chief Building Official for Picken County. And thank you for that appointment. And Scott Thompson from SALT, Ed Mann from Aspen Fire District. So they're here to kind of answer any technical questions if we head that direction. So since about 2007, we've been working on trying to bring forward a ordinance to adopt the International Fire Code that all 4 fire districts could agree upon and come to a concession as how to have standards of enforcement for sprinklers and other aspects of the fire code. What we ended up with was this version that we have now today that has some amendments from the town of Salt, some amendments from Aspen, and then Snowmass and Carbondale are adopting the text as it stands. So that's kind of the history where we've been. We've had a few work sessions. We're here at your direction now to present an amendable version or an ordinance for consideration for adoption.
Thank you, Brian. So, Jack, do you want to ask questions now?
So let's go to page 5, under section 109.2.2. Excuse me, section 202 jumped out at me. There's a term here that it doesn't seem very articulate. It says, guest shall mean any person hiring or occupying a room. Why is the term hiring used?
That was a term that, I'm sorry, Edgar Walraven, that was a term that we used many years ago as renting. At the time when we, and I'm trying to quickly go to the definition here, but the term hiring is synonymous with renting a room.
So why don't we use renting?
We can.
I mean, it just doesn't...
Well, Jack, why don't we check with, since it's a legal term, why don't we check with our attorney and see what he thinks of the word hiring versus renting? John?
I would be comfortable that they're synonymous. I don't know if there's a preference for the term in the IFC or not, without looking at the...
That would be the ruling document, I would think.
It's what we're looking at to adopt these standards locally, so, I'm just not sure. I can do that.
Do we need any clarity for short-term leases versus overnight rentals versus a person renting a room out in there?
As written, there would be no distinction. I don't think you want to make that distinction, to tell you the truth, but
Well, Michael, I certainly, by having brought this up, I would weigh in such that whatever is the determination, I'm going with it. You know, I don't have a problem. It just seemed very awkward. I don't usually hire a room when I go on vacation.
That was an old school term from years ago.
Right. Well, I guess this is the 21st century, so.
Well, there's also a distinction between legal language and English. So, John, that's why we have John.
Yeah, and I'm not debating anything. I brought it up. That's all I care about. Going to page 7. Hotels, etc., on item number 1. And you know, we are certainly a tourist-based renting. You know, we want a lot of rooms rented, etc. This prohibits anyone from smoking cigarettes? Is that really essentially what this means?
I believe it. I need to get to the language if I don't. My pages aren't numbered. What section?
This is,
It just, looks like it just sets a legal precedent, so if a fire is caused by the
Caused
smoking in
by,
the room, or playing with matches, or doing something, destruction is caused, then that's an unlawful act. Looks like
Yeah.
that's what it's defining to me.
And that seems reasonable. But for me, there's also another element that's missing here, and it's about people starting fires, you know, firewood or gas fire, etc. I mean, you know, people can start a fire too there. So I don't know if there's a little gap here, and you know, if you want to look to the source of the cause of a fire, accidental as it might be, and that should be a discussion that I don't expect to, you know, solve right now, but I just think it's an item for discussion.
This paragraph adds to what's already in the code. So this is just an addition to, if somebody carelessly, recklessly starts a fire with a cigarette, that makes it unlawful. That's the only purpose for that.
And when it was written specifically for smoking materials, because at that time the prohibition of smoking was in top of everybody's mind. So.
Yeah, section 310 is smoking as the header, as the title for that section in the code book.
Okay.
So this is specific to smoking is.
Okay, so further clarification, I was not aware that literally these are specific additions. I know the amendments would be. Okay, moving on. 90, same page. 903.2A talks about, you know, apartment houses, condos, hotel rooms, whatever. 2 stories or more in height and containing 4 or more dwellings shall have installed therein an approved automatic sprinkler system throughout the premises. Now, I'm just wondering if we're starting to get to overkill here. You know, there's no one that doubts fire safety is important. And I think, you know, this is a new product, because I don't think, this is not retroactive, is it?
This is not retroactive, but this is something we've been enforcing for the last 15 years. These have been the code, the amendments. None of these amendments are new. These are all amendments that we've adopted as a district over the years, through the past code cycle. So this also is in the building code. This is where it's required.
And that's Aspen. How about Somas Village?
Absolutely.
Because I didn't remember this ever coming up in Somas Village. And we had multifamily in the county. We don't do much multifamily here, so I wasn't remembering at all that. Well, if that's been the practice, that's fine, but to me there's a fine line, and safety, of course, is first, but requiring it in each and every one, and regardless of how far from the response teams, etc., you know, I just question. And I'm certainly aware of the 5,000 square feet. I mean, you know, that's been pretty standard, so I'm good there. I think, hopefully that's it. All my notes. Yes. Thank you for the bit of feedback. Needed clarification, and we're good.
I think the term, sorry, I was going to say, I think the term guest was to put in a definition for someone other than the owner occupants, and I think that was a clarity thing because it wasn't addressed in this book, even though there was references to someone other than the owner being involved in a fire or some kind of incident. So that's why that term guest was even introduced.
Yeah, well, guess is good. It's just the higher. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have more of a broader question. As noted in your memo, the districts work together to try to come up with a cohesive code that would work for everyone. And Snowmass and Carbondale were comfortable with the existing code moving forward. Basalt and Aspen wanted to have some additional modifications. And I couldn't really distinguish what those modifications were and if there's any, and why the concerns were. And I know John's here from Snowmass, why they didn't want to go that route. So just a little more information would be helpful.
Well, each district is unique unto itself, and philosophies are also different. We amended the code, like I said, many years ago, and these are the amendments that we have because they are model codes. I can answer for Snowmass. John can probably answer as to what their direction is. But these we tailor to our jurisdictions in the unique areas that we have in Aspen that they may not be in Snowmass or might not be in Basalt. So this is why we tailor the model codes to fit our uses in our jurisdictions.
Yeah, I from Basalt's perspective, we're a partially paid department. We have water tenders. We deliver water differently than Snowmass or Carbondale. We're similar to Carbondale, but they don't have the development that we do. And as far as on the Pickens County side of it, and probably the biggest reason to choose to do these amendments is so that we're the same as the town of Basalt and Eagle County. And like Ed said, we're different departments. We function differently, we work differently. With a full volunteer department or a full paid department like Snowmass, there are vast differences. So then, just so I understand, so Aspen Fire District made their own modifications. Basalt, you made your own modifications. They're not sort of aligned with one another. They're a little bit different. And then Snowmass and Carbondale decided to just go with the existing.
That's why we kept them distinct in the ordinance, so that there wouldn't be the confusion, because there was times when code sections were reused or used by each district differently. So we thought to keep that distinction, we would have the individual amendments for those two districts that have their distinctions. Strangely enough, some of them are only minor, but they were enough that they addressed them differently. So.
Yes, sir. Could you just give your full name?
Yes, John Melly, Fire Marshal for Snowmass Village. To be clear, George, Snowmass Village does have amendments to the IFC. But in looking in this application, they only apply to our town. Snowmass Village has, in fact, adopted amendments to the IFC that are particular to our town. The way our town functions, the way our town builds, much like Scott Thompson said, the way the departments work. But for this application, taking a look at where the IFC would be applied in Pickens County, if you take a look at Snowmass Village being separate from those codes, we felt that just in the interest of simplicity, it would be better to adopt it as it stands, not to complicate the issues, because most of the rural sections are Pickens County, and the IFC would apply as it stands. Thank you.
That makes sense. Yes, Rachel?
Thank you. I wanted to go back for a moment to page 7, the 903.2A, related to sprinklering. And I just really want some clarification. How does this impact older structures? If a mobile home is sold, does the new owner have to then come up to the new fire code, or are they grandfathered in without sprinklers?
Well, basically, none of this is not retroactive. Now, if somebody goes in and remodels and everything falls into place where it is going to be required to be sprinkled by other parts of the code, then yes, it would have to be would have to be retrofitted.
Well, and that's why I'm kind of wondering how close, how much of a hair trigger is that? What is a remodel? Is it if someone adds a new entryway inside their mobile home or their small apartment, do they have to sprinkle?
I think that's up to the building official. It always has been.
And we're staying with that 5,000 square foot of addition, 5,000 square foot of remodel standard that we've always kind of kept in the county. So something of that size would not fall into that category. Now, other things may drive the requirement there. If the whole subdivision is required now to be sprinkled or whatever because of response time or distance from the fire station. If something else drove that, they may be required to retrofit. But our rule has always been if they are not removing drywall in the remodel, then they don't go in and put sprinklers.
And I'm going to use the case-by-case scenario, inject that here, because sometimes what is shown to us on paper when we go to the structure, say we're just removing a couple of sheets of drywall, we walk in the front door and look up 3 floors to the ceiling, so it is a case-by-case scenario, but we try to apply it uniformly throughout.
Yeah, no, and I was just thinking of 2 things, really. One is that in past conversations about this, the Woody Creek Mobile Home Park in particular came up, and some people were saying, hey, our structures are so old that to try to retrofit the mobile home with a sprinkler system be worth more than the older trailer, the mobile home that's on the lot. And, were we going to be forcing that, not on the immediate owners, but as things are sold or as someone's upgrading? And the second is, of course, I can think of my own unit in Hunter Creek condominiums, older project, not sprinkled, but, if I were to get a remodel permit for something inside my unit, I can't force the other 18 owners or 17 owners in the building to pipe it and set it up for irrigation. So as long as there's something that we're looking at these on a case-by-case basis and are practical in its application, I can understand that.
If I may address those, the first issue, about the mobile home, Woody Creek Mobile Home Park, there was nothing in any of the documentation saying that anything had to be retrofitted. It was basically at the time when we did that and when the 11 new units, those were the ones that were supposed to be sprinkled, and that was the area that was rescinded from the requiring of the sprinklers. The second, as far as your unit goes at Hunter Creek, no, we wouldn't make you sprinkle and then 18 other require them to sprinkle too. If there's a plan to retrofit everything from a life safety standpoint, which for me makes a whole lot of sense, but that's me. It wouldn't be. Now, if you're talking townhomes where they have separate water supplies and things like that, that's a whole different. It's again, we approach that in a different light.
Thank you.
Any further questions for? Yes, Scott?
I'd have to go back to 2007 when we first brought this to you, but we're not going to change what we're doing right now. We're not going to change what we've been doing the last 10 years, 11 years since I've been here. We're just making this legal. We've been telling the public that they have to do this by fire code with no teeth behind it. And where it falls into place is when people have 20, 30 propane bottles in their garage and we get a call. We don't have any enforcement action. We can't legally do anything. So all we're doing is clarifying the amendments are what each fire district already has, already enforcing. We're not changing a thing. And I just want to assure you that there's no reason that any of the fire districts want to go out and start writing tickets to the public. We just want to be legally covered if we force an issue.
Yes, Ron.
I got kind of an odd question that just popped into my head. Papers will pick up on this tomorrow, I'm sure, but is there anything that we should look at in terms of the fire code regarding marijuana production and grow lights? Caregivers that are growing in their own home, and by law, the state of Colorado, they're allowed to grow a certain number of plants per patients they have, those sorts of things?
I know there are jurisdictions looking into that, larger jurisdictions where it's a little more prevalent. We have not looked into it at this point, as far as regulating it from a fire code standpoint. I don't know if Scott has given it thought.
If it's in a residential home, if a neighbor complains, we'll go investigate. But, you know, it's more than likely an electrical code overload issue or something else. But I don't really see that it'd be a huge building or safety issue.
Wear air masks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's more of a...
And we could also look at things like hay storage and other kinds of mass storage too, and try to get some kind of standard to develop how much quantity of something on site, but there's nothing in place that I know of at this time.
I think something like that would be more zoning and Carrington and John. As far as the
All right,
zoning.
pass the buck, pass the buck.
Something like that.
We'd be glad to help.
Now we're not allowed, so I don't know
Okay.
You might want to just change it from tobacco to smoking any substance.
it does say smoking, doesn't say electrical, just says smoking.
Any further questions? Is there a motion?
I'd like to make that motion to approve ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners, Pitkin County, Colorado, amending Title 11, Buildings and Construction of the Pitkin County Code by adopting the International Fire Code -2009 version as amended and adding a new section 11.44 titled International Fire Code.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks for all the hard work.
It's been a long time.
I'll be back in a minute, but continue without me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, that's two projects that have been in the works for a number of years now that you guys have passed.
Who says government's not efficient?
I like that 120-day thing the city has.
So the next item is a consent public hearing. It's a second reading. It's a resolution authorizing the filing of a new passenger facility charge application with the Federal Aviation Administration. Jim Elwood not here, and in his place is
Steve Schultz,
Steve Schultz. And Steve, what's your title?
Properties Administrator.
Properties Administrator. So, are there any questions for Steve? There's no questions for Steve. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado, authorizing the filing of a new passenger facility charge application with the Federal Aviation Administration. And all this is, as a point of explanation, is a continuation of the already existing facility charge, passenger facility charge. The FAA requires periodic renewal.
Is there a second? Is there any further discussion?
This is a public hearing.
Oh, it is a public hearing? Are there any members of the public present who wish to comment on this at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Thank you, Lindy. Did I get a second on that?
Yes.
You seconded. Who made the motion? Chad? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve.
Please mention to Jim we're really disappointed he didn't come in with muffins today.
I would make a note. I would make a note. Thank you. Butter us up for the 3 million, but
The next item is a land use public hearing. It's the Burkholder Investments LTD special review for a cellular facility. And we have Mike Kramer here. Mike, do you want to make a presentation on this?
Yes. So this is the Burkholder Investments Ltd / Verizon Wireless Special Review for building-mounted cellular telephone antenna. And it's actually, the Burkholder Investments Ltd part of it is the property owner, and then the applicant is Verizon Wireless, and we have Brad Johnson here with us to explain his end.
Is Brad from Verizon?
I'm a consultant to Verizon Wireless.
You're a consultant.
Excuse me. And what the applicants are requesting is a continued special review approval for, existing today, 4 building-mounted wireless telephone antennas. And they got approval through us in 2002, and with this proposal, they also want to upgrade the existing 4 antennas and add 2 more, too, on top of the building. The subject parcel is at 301 AABC. It's Unit B, and we all know it as the Aspen Animal Hospital. And the existing conditions, if you see in page 2 of the staff memo, I took 2 pictures. The first one is from the AABC Road, and I just highlighted with a red rectangle, and it shows the 4 antennas. You can just kind of barely make them out in the first picture. The second picture is taken from Highway 82, around where Planet Earth is, and you kind of had a jockey around 2 sets of trees, but you can pick them out. There are 4 antennas sitting there. They're 2 inches in diameter, and they're currently 6 feet in height. And what the applicant is proposing is to increase to 6 antennas, which will be approximately 7 feet in height. And by the time the contractor mounts them, it's going to be about 9 feet overall height with the mounting brackets and hardware that go along with that. And they also be increased in diameter from 2 inches to 4.6 inches. In association with these antennas, there's also a 60-foot space that's leased inside the Aspen Animal Hospital by Verizon. And that houses all the equipment and associated things that are needed for these cell antennas. And the applicant's not requesting to expand this area at all. It would just be an upgrade of equipment in this leased area in the Aspen Animal Hospital as it is today. You can see all staff's responses to the code sections, and we actually only have 1 use-specific standard for building-mounted cellular telephone antennas. And the use-specific standard in the code says that it can exceed the maximum height for that zone district, which is B2, by 10 feet. And the B2 zone district has a 28-foot height limit, and these will be well below that. The applicant's representing to us that it's going to be 31 feet 6 inches in overall height from grade, building, and then top of the antenna, with the antennas being 9 feet total height. There was one issue that came up that needs to be expressed, and the application was referred to the Aspen Fire District. And unbeknownst to me, there was actually a fire in this room a year ago. And Ed Van Walraven provided comments to us.
In what room are you referring to?
Oh, in the lease space that Verizon has with all the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, inside the Aspen Animal Hospital. And the fire district has requested a couple specific things. One of the things they're interested about is getting the fire alarm system that is currently exists inside the lease space for Verizon integrated with the building fire system also. So that way that if the fire alarm system is triggered inside the lease space, it then triggers the building fire alarm system too. And it sounds like Verizon is okay with that. And the second one is some type of fire suppression system inside the lease space for the equipment. When the equipment gets hot, it could potentially set a fire, and it did set a fire in last year, 2011. And it sounds like that the fire district would like some type of suppression system in there. There hasn't been any technical details hashed out yet. So in the resolution, I would propose some language that we could add in at the board's discretion to somehow get the compliance with the Aspen Fire District Code when they retrofit the system.
Thank you. Other questions for staff? Rob?
Fire suppression system, are you talking like an Ansel system for like, that would be in a restaurant, or is there any idea of what that looks like?
I'm definitely not an expert in this area, but I understand that there are two different types of fire suppression systems that are being kicked around. And Brad can speak to them better than I can, but basically one is a gas is injected into the leased area where this equipment is, and it basically takes all the oxygen out of the area, and then it puts the fire out. And I think there was one other type too that I can't really speak to very well.
I think the experts have left the room. So, is that all, Rob?
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine you don't want a lot of water on top of the electronic equipment if there's already a problem. But what I was going to ask is there really adequate ventilation around the equipment if that's overheating to a point of causing a fire? And is there a need for additional ventilation? And if so, would that create more noise issues for some of the neighbors they might not be aware of now?
Yeah, Brad Johnson, consultant for Verizon Wireless. To answer your question, all of our sites, when they're enclosed within a structure such as a tenant finished space here or a standalone equipment shelter versus outdoor equipment cabinets, there are ventilation and separation requirement standards. And on the set of plans, it does show an equipment layout plan on page A2. And you can see that the equipment is lined up in a very formal manner with adequate separation, manufacturer specs, all in compliance, as well as all the equipment is tied into a very elaborate alarm system that goes back to our knock center or our switch center. And the minute that whether there's smoke, fire, high temperature alarms, we see those sometimes where ventilation systems are currently inadequate for newer technology. We will go out and upgrade the HVAC units or the ventilation systems in those units. We haven't experienced the problem with this unit, but if we ever need to, we have the option of either a ventilation louvered system or an HVAC system to help increase or lower that internal temperature of that room.
And would they require structures on the roof as well then for HVAC? That's a separate matter down the road, or?
Either on the roof or typically we like to hang them on the side like a wall-mounted unit. I think in this case it's not really shown real well, but there are, I believe, some HVAC units or condenser units that are on the ground back behind the building, as well as louvered units to help exhaust that heat, because that heat does build up as far as temperature coming off the equipment. But like I said, it's all tied into a very elaborate alarm system that Verizon Wireless monitors very closely. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment in that room that we cannot lose.
It's a shame we can't get some sort of cogeneration or multiple use off the heat that you're taking off of the project. Thank you.
Yes, George. A couple questions. Mike, the original approval, or one of the approvals, we noted expired June 26, 2007, and the applicants have continued using the building mounted after this expiration. What happened there?
In 2002, and I wasn't here when we gave the approval, but we limited the special review approval to Verizon Wireless for 5 years. And it expired in 2007, and it got lost, but Lance has got some information about...
have an explanation, not necessarily an excuse. Yes, if you'll remember, those of you, Jack will remember, and Mike will remember, who have been here a while, when we first started doing cell tower and antenna approvals, it was really new for us, and we weren't certain what the neighborhood ramifications would be, what the acceptability would be, and we were hopeful of initiating a master plan process where we would predetermine throughout Pitkin County where cell towers would be approvable and where they wouldn't. It's a very ambitious thought, and so when people were coming in for approvals, we gave them all short-term approvals under the feeling that we would soon have a master plan and everyone would have to come back in and be in compliance with the master plan. And so we actually did start the master plan process where we tried to bring in all the carriers, had the map of Pitkin County and all the elevations and all the types of buildings to see if we could do a master plan, and it absolutely fell to pieces because the carriers were not willing to share their information with other carriers for fear that they would lose the opportunity to be the first one to get to a certain site, get at least. So the master plan process fell apart, and frankly, we never did go back to pick up these that just had a short-term approval. Now, I know that this site had started working with Carrie Ann Holcomb when she was here a couple years ago about trying to get this back up. So it didn't just come back to us now. I think there was it kind of got lost with Carrie Ann being gone and some other things. But they did start the process earlier than just this year.
So are there others that are outstanding as well with other?
I think, well, there aren't many. I will want to look back and see. I know there was an antenna on the hospital, and I'm not sure if those had a time frame on them. And the other one that I'm thinking of looking at is there's an actual cell tower at the end of Aspen, and most people aren't even aware of it.
Is it a tower or a tree?
No, it's actually a tower. It's not a tree at the end of Aspen, right by Buttermilk. And you hardly ever see it because it's behind the tree. So we should look and see if we can find if there are others who may have expired and are continuing. There aren't a lot of them, but there may be a couple.
On the last page of the resolution, on the recital of the resolution, number 8, in terms of the statutory vesting rights, the last sentence says that the statutory vesting rights granted herein shall expire on February 8, 2012.
Yeah, it should be 2015.
And then, Brad, perhaps when you make your presentation, my question for you is, as you're looking at not only increasing the height of these antennas, but also the diameter, are we going to get better reception, faster reception? What is the reason for that?
Yeah. The two purposes for this application before you today is, number one is to extend the ability to use the facility at this location. This facility is an extremely critical site to the Verizon Wireless network and ensuring that the public in this area has the best and optimal level of service without creating a gap. This site primarily covers Highway 82, the residents that live to the east and to the south, as well as the numerous businesses within Aspen Business Park and the airport itself as well. The other aspect of this proposal before you is also to upgrade the facility as a result of 4G LTE technology coming out, and that's the reason for the new antennas, is to be able to accommodate the higher data speeds, the amount of data that people are requiring from their wireless devices, not only their phones, but the iPad and other devices as well. It's putting an extreme burden on all of our networks. And the only way to accommodate that is, number one, upgrade the utilities to fiber optics, as well as bring in equipment to handle 4G LTE technology, as well as antenna upgrades as well. And unfortunately, the larger diameter Omni antenna and the taller antennas are the best technology we've got to mimic the same level of coverage that the antennas are producing now. So it's as a response to a technology upgrade.
You would think that as technology advances, if you look at the old IBM mainframes and now what you have, the capacity on a little chip, you would think cellular technology would actually advance to a smaller, less impactful presence than a larger.
And that's what I thought too, starting 12 years ago in this industry, was, it's going to get smaller, I'm going to work myself out of a job in 5 to 10 years. But no, what we're seeing is just the demand on the network is so extreme that we're going from sites that used to have 2 or 3 antennas to now having up to 15 antennas, just to accommodate the amount of data and voice that's traveling over the radio waves from these sites. And we're also seeing, a lot of usage from nights and weekends or along major thoroughfares or highways or interstates to everywhere. I mean, a lot of people are discontinuing their landlines. I've discontinued mine to save money, rely completely on my wireless device. So there is, we anticipated something a little bit different, and, we're trying to respond to the demand that people are having on our network now. So.
Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Rob?
We're obviously going through some broadband things here in Pickens County that we want to promote and get rural. I don't know if you've been reading the papers the last couple of days, but we'd like to have some better broadband. So I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
First, how could our codes allow better service in various rural areas? Well, as I noted, the demand or the shift from nights and weekends
to 24/7 is putting such a burden on our facilities that, we used to be able to get a mile, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of a cell site, especially when we were with analog, but when we went to switch to digital, the FCC required us to turn the power way down. So our range shortened up quite a bit. So what we're seeing is, sites that used to cover a mile out, now the demand on the site, the call traffic that site's getting is too much. And so what we're having to do is what we call cell split. Take one cell site that used to cover a certain area and split it into 2 or 3 to ensure the same level of coverage given the demand on the system. So we're going to start seeing, just speaking statewide, we're going to start seeing more penetration into residential areas. We're going to see a lot more, use of public right-of-ways, attaching small antennas to street light poles or traffic poles, just so that we can get that level of penetration that, the public is demanding on these sites. So, in some areas, what we thought, going back to the whole, master plan and proposing, our sites and, making sure that future applications meet those areas, it's hard to predict, that was, 5-6 years ago that we were looking at that, and, look where we've come in 5 or 6 years. Now we've got a cell site just about every quarter mile, sometimes every street corner, just to keep up with the demand. So, and I don't see it slowing down the way that people are really relying on these devices and the amount of devices that are on the market right now. So I think just accommodating, the sites are getting shorter, but there's going to be more of them. Like this site that we're talking about today may cover, X, square acres or miles. It's going to be a lot less as we go forward, and the demand on the system gets more and more. So it's going to hit a point where we're going to need more and more sites.
One of the issues we have here in the Roaring Fork Valley, and specifically the hub center here, Aspen, is, as Michael likes to say, where the snake's swallowing the pig or sometimes swallowing the cow. I'm in the tourism business outside of this arena. Why do we not have decent cell coverage across the board during Christmas week? Obviously it's the usage, but how does your business adapt to those things?
We have to look at it from the standpoint of the NOC center or the operations center. They monitor block calls not going through, calls not sounding very good. They are constantly monitoring that information. And once it hits a certain point, the engineers are tasked with finding a solution, whether that is adding additional antennas, adding additional radios inside of our equipment shelters, and if all that fails, then we look at cell splitting, adding more and more cell sites. So once it hits a certain point, we will be splitting a site if the call traffic hits a certain level. And if there's peak times, one way to counteract that is to bring in a temporary site. It's called a cow or a cell on wheels. We do that for state fairs or for special events. We will bring in a cow upon a landowner's request for an event request.
Have you done that here in Aspen with X Games or Christmas week? Or
I don't know for sure. Typically,
we had somebody talk to us about doing it at the X Games.
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. AT&T. I think AT&T.
Verizon or AT&T. Yeah.
Did investigate for X Games putting a cow over at Planet Earth, but in the end they didn't do it.
Cow at Planet Earth.
I guess my last comment is just, please take the opportunity to express to the people that you do consulting work for that this is something that we've recognized as a important aspect to providing a diverse economy and all sorts of different things, a better service to our tourists, to the people the residents that live here, and we look and hope to get their assistance and their guidance on how we can further the broadband issue into rural as well as additional service within the population centers here in Pickens County.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
George?
Just to follow up on that, what you said earlier, Brad, was that you may need to look at public utility corridors in terms of accessing for providing better service, certainly in all of our valleys. So would that mean that you would look at or have the ability to put on a small transmitter or a small dish along existing power lines that go up and down each of these valleys that are not available currently for cell service or broadband?
Absolutely. Depending on the power company that we're dealing with, some are easier to work with than others. For example, Xcel Energy, not on their residential distribution towers, but on their main transmission towers, the big tall ones that you see running along I-70. We are able to co-locate on some of those. We are able to attach full antenna arrays on there, and that helps out a lot when a lot of the surrounding area is unable to be used or leased or zoned. We get creative with trying to go on those utility towers and poles, absolutely. Substations, all that good stuff.
So do you do a cost benefit analysis for your company? So for example, if we wanted to look at running a line way up the frying pan, which would only probably access maybe 50 residents in the wintertime, I mean, how do you determine whether you would go ahead and provide that service if you have the ability to use existing power lines to provide that access?
It's all based upon the engineers, and again, they're tasked with, once an area experiences a certain high volume of block calls or calls not going through. I mean, the NOC Center is recording all of that information. You drop a call as you're driving down the road, that NOC Center is recording that. That information is used to help determine areas that we need additional service in. And then once the engineer has made that determination, they then design the site, and then people like myself are tasked with securing the land rights, the zoning permits, the building permits, ensuring that adequate telephone service is there, adequate access to the cell site is there. And in some of those mountain areas, that is tough. But yes, that's completely based upon the engineer's evaluation, based upon the need for service on drop calls, poor call rates, that kind of thing.
Some of these areas don't even have any service at all.
Correct.
So how do you determine if and when you will provide service?
I'm not sure what criteria they use. I mean, there is definitely a cost factor in there. I mean, these cell sites are not cheap to build. We do have options of repeater sites, which are a lot smaller than just a full-blown cell site that help extend coverage into a certain area that we're having problems with. But they look at all those factors, cost, accessibility, drop call rates, you name it. They look at that and factor that in.
So you may have the ability to provide service. It may just be a question of cost to you. So the opportunity for us to look at providing broadband into these currently inaccessible areas may be to look at grants and other funding mechanisms and then work in partnership with the provider.
Yeah, the problem we're running into with Colorado and the mountain region is topography is a killer. These cell sites operate by line of sight, and if the antenna can't see into an area, the chances are of getting signal back in there is tough. So especially the mountain areas are really, really difficult to ensure 100% coverage to every resident. But we're doing our best to extend coverage to wherever coverage is needed.
And that's why I was curious whether you could access power lines that go up and down all of these valleys.
Yep.
And sort of a series of signals that move it up and down. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions for Brad? Yes, Jack.
Yeah, taking off from what Lance indicated earlier, it was rather disappointing when we had this great idea to comprehensively look at master planning the county, and then it fell apart because of proprietary information. But I'll go back to today, and Rob and George are absolutely correct about our board's and community's desire to have enhanced service. Does Verizon have a master plan, quote-unquote, just for Pickens County?
I would have to ask the engineer that question. I would assume that they do. And at this point, I would say the majority of that area has been planned out. And what we're trying to do is look at the statistics of where, the trends for high volumes of calls.
Traditional volume.
Exactly. And try to anticipate, not retroactive, but try to anticipate where we're going to have issues and fix those as quickly as possible. That's one good thing that Verizon Wireless has always been good about, is being proactive as far as determining where they're going to need service before it's a major issue. So.
Good. No, thank you.
Yes.
Board, I'd like to ask, given that there is a motion to approve second and this might go forward, one of the issues for me would be vested rights. I don't normally think about, well, yeah, let's extend vested rights. This is a particular application and a site, and we're certainly sensitive to visuals, which at least by the representations do not look dramatic at all as far as the change. And something Rachel brought up, very important, the neighborhood impacts, the concern, fire safety certainly, but noise, because we've had another site in another part of the community that really opened our eyes about this type of situation. But I'm understanding under the representations made, and of course there's a nuisance issue if it does not pan out, so I think we have a way to approach. But is anyone interested in, say, going 5 years so we don't have somebody just bounce in here, every 3 years? And Lance, is there any drawback?
Yeah, the vested rights, what that means, that February 8th, 2015, is it means they have until 2015 to build this approval. This has no time limit at all. In other words, if they build it by 2015, it's there forever. But a special review does allow you to set a time limit. You could say that, just like we said in 2002, that we were going to reevaluate this, you could say that this approval is good for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years and will be reevaluated at that time. A special review allows you to do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that clarification, because I felt got a little sideways here, because was there a limit? But that's what happened in the past. So now this is long-term, but it's the actual construction we're talking about. Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I withdraw that question. And we'll make a motion if the chair would allow.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, if I can get my finger over here to get this open. Okay, I would like to move to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, granting approval for the Burkholder Investments Ltd. / Verizon Wireless Special Review for building mounted cellular telephone antennas, with an additional amendment to staff's proposed conditions, one which would be relative to the installation, that the installation shall be consistent with the Aspen Fire District's requirements. And that the specific wording, we want to make sure staff gets that to a necessary degree.
And we also have the amendment to the statutory
Date.
to 2015.
Oh, yeah, to 15 from 12. Yeah, thank you.
I'll second that.
It is a public hearing. George reminded me.
Can I add one more thing to that too? Sorry. If you look at condition 3 of the resolution, it says zoning permit. I'd like to make that a building permit so that it can get properly routed to the fire district for them. That'd just be the only change.
And I would agree to that amendment.
Michael, before the public hearing,
Yeah, okay, just a second.
I think it's somewhat implicit in our code, but I think that adding an additional condition that the facility will comply with Pickens County's noise standards in the neighborhood would be a good heads up on that for the ventilation system.
Yeah, and I would certainly accept that as a friendly amendment also.
Thank you.
Except that it's a second.
You probably couldn't hear it over the barking dogs anyway, so. It is a public hearing. Are there members of the public here who wish to make a comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Yes, Lindsay?
I wanted to ask Lance, wasn't there something that we were going to be adding as a requirement to all of these in the future about having the name and contact information available? When we went through WSOSJ, I thought that was a continued requirement that we had on another one.
You got red here.
We can, we can add that. We have done that, you're right, you're correct. There has been a time where we've said, always, if Verizon sold it to AT&T, we want to know who the contact is.
Okay.
And we can add that.
Fair enough.
You're right.
Is that necessary to put in as a condition, or is it a staff direction?
Probably should be a condition.
Yeah, I think so.
Is that satisfactory to you?
It certainly is.
George?
It is again.
Yeah. One
Do you
question.
want to add something?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Lindy, that's a great catch. I appreciate that tremendously. And when I was thinking about it, was it just for staff to know who to contact, or was it something posted on the door so that the neighbors at W/J would also know who to call if there was a problem? I think it's both, that staff is notified of any change of ownership and that there be some sort of number on the door of the facility that people can call if they think there's a problem.
Okay. We'll replicate whatever condition, that sounds right, whatever we used before.
Thank you.
Is that satisfactory, George?
Yes.
Condition, the amendments were as big as the resolution, the conditions, but good thinking, everyone.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
And you did open and close the public hearing?
I did open and close it. A great effort.
Do you want these wonderful maps back, in case you need them for some future
Would you like your applications back?
project or recycling?
I can recycle
Yes. Let me give them back.
Yeah, well, we have so much already.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Here we go. Here's a few more for you.
And you might ask Verizon, the status of their master. Where are we at?
So
Okay,
many
great.
different consultants working on things. Mike, mind just passing those to Brad there?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let them know that you're concerned about.
Here's the copy of that other clean
We have
water.
some momentum.
Appreciate that, thank you.
This time there's Board of County Commissioners open discussion.
Okay, coming around should be a draft letter. This letter was distributed to you by emails forwarded on from Rachel. And it's really proposed language that has been put out by the National Association of Counties has taken a position regarding two Supreme Court cases that have challenged the Clean Water Act. And I'd give you a minute to go through this. The direction I think we're looking for is, do we wish as a county to weigh in on this issue with similar language? Or this language would be easy to.
I've never seen since that we've had the opportunity to write a letter directly to President Obama, and I'd be happy to hand deliver this.
This would be the first one, I think. So.
You've never written a president?
Yeah.
I've written a president on a lot of occasions.
Any responses back?
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
They sent you a nice card saying,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So is the reason why, excuse me.
Yes, Jack.
Thank you. Apologize for interrupting. So the reason why this is going directly to the president is because it's so critical to have rulemaking done this year? Would that be?
I think that might be a good synopsis. as I understand it, although there were some legislative activities to clarify the Clean Water Act, they have fully stalled out and nothing is happening. There's a continued push and pull about whether it should include the word navigable or all waters of the U.S. type of things. And so it's basically been kicked to the EPA to do rulemaking to try to clarify what the Clean Water Act applies to and what it doesn't apply to. And it's a very lengthy history about the uncertainty that's been created for the Corps of Army Engineers and for others about permitting, what they should permit, what they shouldn't permit. It's just really a vague area right now. And so this isn't commenting specifically on the rules per se, but just saying it's really time to move forward with something. So I think it'd be valuable to send it, but it's,
I'm super supportive.
Is everyone supportive of sending this letter? As super supportive as Jack? Or
Yeah, I would just say, I think we should also still send a copy to our senators. I mean, it's always good to keep them in the loop. They're so supportive of us when we need their help. And then since this is going to the president, I would also say that it should be signed by all of us.
Fine with that.
Okay.
And as it evolves and there gets to be the specific rules, we may want to comment, we may want to offer, support of some and ask for modifications of others, but this is where it kind of stands right now. Okay, very good.
Second quick item, we talked a little bit about this yesterday too. This is the email forwarded again from Rachel on the PACE program, and we do have 60 days. And what I couldn't find was from when. The email came to us January 31st, but I did not see the exact dates, but we do have
That'd be great.
a little bit of time to comment on the PACE project. Letters on this program before. I think we could probably pull some of that language if the board wishes to write another letter in support of the latest considerations.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what our previous letters were. We had some that were before we had passed our local ballot issue and some that were after. And so obviously I think we want to lead off with the fact that our citizens have already endorsed and we have the funding in place to move forward with this and how much it would help with our job retention or creation within the construction industries. And as I've said before, I think a letter from us is fine and good, but we need to be reaching out through all the other avenues we can within our valley to generate a lot of letters and support private installers, trade groups, other types. So that's where I just want to help get the word out and see if we can get this going, because it'd be valuable economic development for us.
Is the board supportive of this? Yes, George?
Yeah, I am. I just, as I mentioned yesterday, that CORE is working on this as well through a tri-county effort, so it may be worthwhile just giving Nathan a call and see what their key points are, and if we could feedback on that as well. And we'll have the exact date when these are due. He told me yesterday it was in March.
Oh, okay. And I got Nathan yesterday too, and we set up a time to visit. So.
Yes, Jack.
So I'm inferring from this, this is something we're aware of, we're going to write a letter.
We can bring that language back. We have time on this one.
Yeah, the unique difference on this, it's in that first paragraph, but it's the Federal Housing Finance Agency has opened a court-order 60-day public comment period. So this is not about our senators taking it forward, although we certainly want to keep them in the loop with our support. It's about finance rules that affect the program, that basically halted the program before.
Okay, we'll go forward on this issue also.
Okay, thank you.
Any further open discussion?
That's all I had.
Board, do you have any open discussion? Jack?
Yeah, ironically, has to do something with this item here. After last night's discussion, comments, we'll leave it just as termed comments, at the City Hall with the City Council, and asking a question about the energy upgrades to for sale units, it just didn't set well with me as far as the information. So I called Nathan this morning, found out that George had called earlier in the week, I believe, and maybe that's what your reference to rentals, installation in rental units was about. And Nathan said his understanding, okay, let me start. We had dealt with this as far as the budget grant request for CORE last year. And it got the city's request for grant got modified to rentals. And when I brought that up, George made a reference. It was somewhat denied by Steve Barwick that, no, we're doing the for sale units and there's a big challenge. So I called Nathan. Nathan said his recollection was, number one, certainly it got refined to rentals. And then, in fact, it sounded like the city of Aspen was going to fund a component of the same idea for sale units. But we didn't hear any of this last night. It was kind of a denial that rentals were even involved. So what I am requesting, the board's direction to staff, is let's clarify what's going on. And maybe we can do that right now.
And I'm not going to necessarily clarify right now, but we do have a follow-up presentation from city staff on the proposal scheduled for the 21st. And originally, what the city had proposed was yesterday to do that PowerPoint presentation and go through the memo and have the discussion during the joint meeting. We had requested a more open discussion format for the meeting, and so we put all of those into kind of memo of interest kind of format, understanding that there may be additional questions. That's why we scheduled workshop time for the board with city staff to go through the presentation. It sounds like we do have those questions, so we will have some opportunity to clarify.
Michael, may I follow up just on this question? Okay, John, so I understand that, but before we get to, or as at that meeting, I'd like this clarification to happen, and therefore we need to ask the question earlier. I don't mind a program here, but there's just kind of dangling or contradicting facts here.
Rachel? Yeah, I agree fully with clarification. My understanding could be wrong, but what I really got from the memo was that they're really actually separate programs, as you're describing. That there was the CORE grant for rental properties, how do we move those forward? And this proposal, as I read it, was upon the resale of existing units, and the cost of those improvements could be added to the resale price. So that was more of what's being proposed that we will look at is more of a structural change to the affordable housing resale program. It was not about CORE dollars or any other rebate dollars going into those homes. And so I did see them as very separate programs. Again, I look forward to the work session, I look forward to the clarification, but I also would like to see our staff do a little bit of a pro and con analysis of that presentation coming to us. I mentioned some of my concerns last night, both the affordability of the units going forward, and if those improvements are being made and the new homeowner is having the benefit of the lower heating bills, it mirrors pace in a weird way, but it also could be a big cash benefit for someone living there, whereas some of those energy efficiency improvements could have diminished over time or need replacing by the time a second homeowner buys the unit 10 years after the flip. And so I really want to make sure we're looking kind of at all 360 angles of it. There may be some real value there, but I also don't know how those new improvements become depreciated, which ones you get credit for in the upgrade of the housing costs. As we saw in the demographic numbers from our retreat, a predominant amount of our workforce is mismatched down into category 2 and 3, and maybe some 4s, and the majority of our inventory is up at 4 or 5 and RO. And so we're already mismatched for the affordability of those units. So those are the types of things I want to make sure we're not just receiving a presentation, but that we've had some staff analysis prior.
And part of that, too, is exactly what the AFSHA regulations are, because right now that's part of the increase allowable within current deed restrictions, or deed restrictions that are brought up to current standards, that you can have unlimited value on energy efficiency improvements on someone's unit.
Yeah.
But what the city, I believe, is talking about, and what that memo was addressing, was during the transfer of the unit, the city doing it to fund it by putting in new windows or a new heater or whatever, and then selling it at that increase, as opposed to a tenant of the building going and putting in new windows and spending their money on those things. They're basically funding the improvements through the increased valuation, as opposed to an individual tenant funding the improvements through their increased valuation. But it really goes back to one thing I brought up during the board retreat, which is, I'd like to take a closer look on how AFSHA is running these programs and what the right formula is. What have we done right and what have we done wrong?
For capital improvement.
For capital improvements.
Yeah, I agree with that fully, and that's where I just still struggle with it, because, again, if you were a homeowner, if you're a potential homeowner, you bid on a $160,000 unit or $200,000 unit, and that's about all you can afford, and you're stretched for your down payment for qualifying for your loan, and you've won that right of that unit, but before you settle, the price just went up to $210,000 or $212,000, and you no longer qualify, or the monthly pay, it's just, it's a little bit of buying a pig in a poke. Is it going to be $5,000 worth of improvements, or $2,000, or is it going to be $20,000? And who draws the line on how much improvement needs to be made, or how much money needs to be spent? Is it, spending $1,000 for a 3% increase in energy efficiency, or is it spending $5,000 for a 50% increase in energy efficiency? What's the decision point as to when that's good money to spend? Mm-hmm. So I just think that there's a lot of details. It's an interesting concept. I think it has some merit to continue to explore, but I just want to see where all the different details lie.
Yes, Jack. Yeah, I'd also like to request then, because it's important to understand the two programs, potential programs here, I'd like to have an update about what's the status with the rental grant. Has it been implemented? Is it being used on some of the rental properties, or is it at least properties identified? Where is it at? Because we clearly approved it unanimously last year.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if that was allocated till January 1st or was already allocated back in the fall.
Yeah, I don't know when distribution is. George, do you know?
I don't know.
Maybe we ought to get a little heads up on that one. That's, our funds immediately distributed if, in fact, they're approved by both boards.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Any further open discussion? Yes, George?
I have one. Rachel actually mentioned this to me, so it's a good catch, and I mentioned this to John Peacock. Given that Jim True has taken a new position as a city attorney, whereas he was our hearing officer, we need to get a new hearing officer. So I don't know, is that a higher position? Is it an appointee position? What's the process?
Yeah, I did. It is a hired position. I believe John made that selection last time, and we're going to draw lots to see this time, I think. So we still need to visit about how to go about that search. I don't know if you have anyone in mind at this point. So
is that like an open search that we need to advertise for? Or just like any position in the county?
This is pretty specialized. I think I'd look at it more as a kind of a professional service that's coming back to the county, because it is, and it's a pretty particular professional service that's coming back to the county, which gives us a lot more leeway. I'd almost look at it more as a procurement in that regard than a personnel hire. Wouldn't you, John?
Actually, the procurement code wouldn't apply to it either.
Yeah, well, and that was going to be my point, because it's, this requires such specialized expertise and such. It's not something that we would have to bid out.
So it's a contractual agreement?
And is it contractual through ComDev or through the attorney's office?
The existing one is through ComDev, and it could be anywhere.
Okay. So you're on it.
So we're getting on it. Yeah.
We're getting on it.
Is there any sort of time frame we need to be looking at for that? For any upcoming hearings?
The next date for the hearing officer is a little off, a little ways out, is my recollection. So it's
No real sense of urgency?
well, there's a sense of urgency that you want to get it over with, get it done, get it done. But it's not human.
Can I follow up just on another question? You just reminded me, because we talked about with the assessor's office about hiring a contractual person perhaps down in Denver to act as a hearing officer for them, since we've lost.
It's not a hearing officer, it's an attorney to represent the assessor's office.
Yes. What's the status of that?
That was concluded, and that person's available now to handle hearings in Denver. I forget her name, to be honest with you, otherwise I'd tell you, but I can't remember.
So that was budgeted in the county attorney's office, within the fund where they can hire counsel to help with outside counsel to help with specialized needs. And so I don't know who it was either.
Yeah, I forget.
Okay. It'd be nice to, I don't want to, get into details. It would be nice to have that information just as a follow-up. When requests came in from Tommy Isaac and we discussed it, and we never heard back, and now we said we've got someone on the line, but this is all new to us.
Okay.
Good point.
Any further open discussion? Yes, Chad?
Yeah, good call, both of you guys, because I kind of lost it in the drift of business too, so right on. Yesterday I had a very brief and really not a conversation, kind of just a few exchanged comments with Rob about the subcommittee for the EOTC, and he was kind enough to have staff copy me the memo. There's a memo here, and I'm bringing this up because we have an imminent meeting. 2 of you all are going to go. I'm sure you've done your homework, but Dave Peckler's memo makes some assumptions or assertions that throw a little curve to my thinking, and so I'd like to just share, because your independent commissioner is well able to interact, but share 2 comments about, and this is Dave, last page of Dave Peckler's memo, about midway through the last paragraph on the back page, says approximately 1/3 of Snowmass Village total sales tax potential is going to other jurisdictions. Well, we understand how the breakout is, etc., but that's kind of a tough statement. We'll just be nice about how I put it. And I have to say, the first thing that popped up in my mind was, and this is about sales tax leakage. Well, golly, thank goodness Aspen exists, because I know Snowmass Village would not exist without Aspen. And I live there, and I'm totally behind Snowmass Village. But there's a type of defensive, offensive thinking going on here, which makes me uncomfortable. And the second one comment is a little further down. It says, in both comparisons of revenue generation to project benefit of expenditure to the county, I mean, the county is a key beneficiary and he comes in with rates, and because he's making certain assumptions to even get to these numbers. Expenditure benefits to the county. Well, hey, we're part of a team, and we all collectively have easily the best rural transit authority in the state. And you know what? I'm not sure these benefits accrue to the county. It seems like they accrue to everyone because we're all in this together. And Somass Village employees, for example, use that bus system to go right out of the county. So just be careful about what the assertions are. I guess that's all I would say here, because I don't look forward to getting into a pissing match, as it were, with Somass Village. But it really raised my eyebrows when I read this memo, and not that it's it's not really sticking a knife in anyone, but when you follow the drift, Somass Village apparently thinks it's, in Dave Peckler's thinking, being treated unfairly, and that's not factual, and has been treated unfairly. So,
Yeah, and my comment will be that we're going to go back and look at the original EOTC mission statement and the benefit for everyone who's participating, all three, the county, the two municipalities, and it's not a question of cost-benefit analysis at all. And I think we'll better move off that very quickly and move on to the larger topic of how to really address the use of the funds.
yeah, I mean, obviously, the source of funds, and maybe then therefore you'll be looking at use of funds in the bigger picture.
Right.
But we don't need chips on our shoulders from jurisdictions.
Yes.
I agree with the sentiment you're bringing up, Jack, and George as well. And I think George has ID'd the right perspective. I did ask John, since I was going to have to step back from that committee with other commitments and very well ably replaced, that, we have a longer look back to the origination of the funding, the commitment we've all made with a portion of that towards the RAFTA system that supplies such an important aspect to all of our communities in terms of workforce transportation, and then how much has really remained to go into the capital fund and the ongoing fund. But it gets very difficult in my mind to assign benefit of those capital expenditures to, this was the benefit to Picken County when we replaced the new Maroon Creek Bridge. We are one community. The schools and the hospitals are on the other side of that Maroon Creek Bridge, and I'm sure that's a benefit to the guests and the residents of Snowmass not to be traveling over a retrofitted railroad bridge from the 19th century. So how do you assign benefit for capital projects is very difficult. The other is simply that, even from the earliest formations of the RTA, or the earliest passage of the half penny, the question of sales tax leakage has been huge. How much sales tax leakage does the city of Aspen have to people shopping in Elgibel? And it's still collected for the RTA system, but it may be our residents shopping at the city market there because it has a greater selection. Sales tax leakage is just a slippery slope that I don't think anyone can fully define. One of the reasons behind the free shuttle was to say, well, look, everyone who comes up to ski Snowmass for the day is deciding to leave before 6 p.m. because then the shuttles start to cost you $2 a person per trip. So they all line up to leave town quickly, and they don't stay in the restaurants in Snowmass. So, how do you measure sales tax leakage? I mean, I think it's, if there's ever been an example of a rising tide lifts all boats, it's probably the ability to jointly market, to promote all the amenities jointly, and to promote the ease of transportation jointly, and the ambiance of not having overcrowded roads and the resultant air pollution. So I think you're right to look at it with we're all in it together, and these things have certainly been mutually beneficial.
One last comment on this, Michael. I would like to suggest, only because it's hard facts, that because the packet alludes to it, that the actual 1993 ballot language be included, as well as the, there's a summation in here, et cetera. Just so there can't be any background, well, this is what I think. The language speaks for itself. And it's pretty general anyway.
As well as the 2000 language.
Yeah, well, no, the 1993.
Yeah, but it was amended with the 2000 language, so I think having them both in there is valuable.
And there's, it is alluded to, but I'd like staff to consider showing up with that for everyone. Thank you. That's it. Appreciate it, Michael.
Okay. End of open discussion.
I'll just note one more thing. Tomorrow, City and County Managers Association, tomorrow and Friday, is having a meeting in Glenwood, and I was going to try and be part of those. So I'll be available on my cell phone.
Very good.
Okay. Is tomorrow the date of the subcommittee also?
Yeah, and so we do have Brian and Tom, and I was going to visit, hopefully catch George and Rod to see if you want me back there for the afternoon. Or
I think we're covered.
I think so.
I think, if you make sure that your schedule is free for the second one.
Yeah.
So that if we do have questions that we want to follow up with, that you'll be available for that one.
Okay. So we have evaluations next. So we're going to move it to
Executive session.
Executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I would move to go into executive session to discuss personnel, county manager and county attorney evaluations pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-4024F.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So let's take a 10-minute break and come back. Perfect.
Can we make it 15 just because grassroots has to break down? And
We can make it 15, so 2:17, let's
okay.